Suddenly the world has gone cold again. For some reason, Liverpool is flipping freezing. A month and 1 week ago, it was 14 degrees C. I was walking around in a t-shirt, and now it's 4 degrees C and raining. Madness. Today, I'm going to be talking about finding a good coach that works for you, and some tips for what to look for, and then I'm going to take questions on healing, how to heal, how to move forward. I just released a video, I think it was about 5 minutes ago. 5 tips is about 10 minutes long. 5 tips to find a good coach. When I started, I had come in 2013 straight from doing another project on self-protection called Street Fight Secrets. The site is still up, streetfightsecrets.com. I did have a YouTube channel that was showing self-protection techniques and martial arts stuff. It got taken down, allegedly for being too violent. Ha ha. Not too sure it was too violent at all, on a platform that provides all kinds of violent and horrifying nonsense, and then goes, oh, we didn't know it was there. We couldn't find it. Sorry about that. We just didn't know. But yeah, they still took all my material down. So Street Fight Secrets, I came on to do coaching as well as doing my self-defense and self-protection training. What I noticed was people needed help with self-assertiveness. That then led me into, by accident really, this whole area that focused on predatory mindsets and prey mindsets, and what it was that meant that people couldn't defend themselves, or they would struggle to say no. They would struggle to set boundaries and to push back against people who were infringing on their boundaries. And that's what I looked at. That's what I explored. And then I learned about cluster B personality disorders, which was a revelation for me. And I learned about CPTSD, which I'm really, really glad that I did. My understanding of psychology has expanded massively since starting this Spartan Life Coach YouTube project. And one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to see if I could help people just by telling stories, just through YouTube videos. Can you make lasting change, lasting healing change, just by telling people stories and talking to them, talking about stuff in a very horizontal, down-to-earth, natural way? Can you actually make real change? And according to some people, they'll tell you that apparently it works, which is really, really cool. Just going to go through these 5 tips real quick. No surprises here. Ghetto Zoom change. If you're looking for help and you're trying to recover from something that you feel may be in the cluster B personality disorder spectrum, and that you might be personally dealing with complex post-traumatic stress, then it goes without saying, you need to make sure that that coach, that person that you're speaking to, actually specializes in these 2 subjects. These 2 subjects are complex, they're nuanced, and they really require more than a weekend's worth of training. The coach or the therapist needs to have studied them for a good period of time. It's no good for you to be sat in a session with a coach or a therapist and you clearly have far more knowledge than they do about the subject. That's not good in any sense, and it's also not going to assist with your trusting of them. The second thing I would look for is that they be healing and future focused, because we, at the receiving end of this type of gaslighting and ambient abuse and emotional abuse, we, because of that, become very past focused and very pain focused. So it really is your coach or your therapist's job, in quite a regimented way, much the way that somebody who's training you in martial arts would, or training you in boxing, or training you in strength training, would demand of you that you take your body, your mind, and your emotions in a new direction, which might require repetitious training, that might require a degree of commitment and discipline. So this also is really important. Compassion should go without saying, but there are a lot of people out there in the mental health profession who just don't have it. They just don't have that warmth. They don't have that empathy. They don't have the capacity to be a human, to see you as a human, to be a human, and to be in the space with you with humanness. Humor is a big part of that, For me, I personally wouldn't want to be vulnerable and couldn't develop a strong coaching or therapeutic relationship with somebody who was humorless, didn't have a sense of humor. I personally just couldn't do it. Humor is a very, very powerful tool in the healing process, in the process of getting out. I think it's essential. You would want somebody down to earth. You don't want somebody hovering over you. You don't want somebody being patronizing, authoritarian, or studying you from some position, that they have fantasized that they are, because they have the knowledge, that they're kind of hovering over you. That's not great. You want like an easy horizontal relationship, and you want them to give you honest feedback, and they need to be comfortable giving you negative feedback, in my humble opinion, because of the particular nature of the subject that we're looking at, which is emotional abuse at the hands of somebody who's in the cluster B spectrum and has complex post-traumatic stress as a result of that abuse, and possibly from childhood trauma as well. Our thoughts become somewhat warped. Our perceptions become warped because of the emotional dysregulation. We can end up with post-traumatic embitterment syndrome. We can end up living in dark reality tunnels. And somebody needs to come along and, with compassion and a sense of humor and being down to earth, just challenge that, challenge our thoughts, challenge our feelings with us, and help us to explore them philosophically and say, okay, how do you know that this is actually true? Is there any chance that what you're saying is not true? And if that's the case, what can we do about it? And on that score particularly, I would add they should offer you help, but they should also be encouraging you to help yourself. There you go. I wrapped that up pretty tight, right? That's good. I stopped within a reasonable time frame. I'm open to taking questions. Please make them a single sentence that end in a question mark, and let's focus on how to heal or how to find coaches to help us heal. Yoga Lily asks, is it important to have a professional diagnosis for complex PTSD, or if you come across the meaning because you cry from relief that this is you, can you work from that standpoint? It's actually very hard to get a professional diagnosis for complex PTSD. It's not recognized by the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostics and Statistical Manual. I'm not sure if it's in the World Health Organization or if it's going to be. But even then, I went on a counseling directory today to help somebody find a qualified counselor. So in the UK, and I think you have it in America, imagine you have it in Canada too, you have whole directories of therapists and counsellors. In the UK, it's called the Counselling Directory. Helpful. There'll be one for Australia, there'll be one for Germany, there'll be one for everywhere. And within the search engine of that directory of counsellors, psychotherapists, and coaches, it will allow you to put in tags like CPTSD, BPD, and DBT. And I put in a particular combination today, and stuff that maybe people following this channel or that I would think of as being very pedestrian, quotidian subject matter that's every day. I look at it every day. In the whole of the UK, I could actually only find 8 people who were qualified, and to the extent that I would want them to be, to deal with the issue that I wanted them to deal with. It's not for me. It's for a friend, but it's been established that they should see a professional counsellor for the particular issue that they're looking at. So there are counselling directories that you can use, but even if you use them, finding the exact combination is rare. No, you don't need a professional diagnosis. I particularly discourage people from diagnosing somebody else with a cluster B personality disorder, I do it for 2 reasons. One, you're diagnosing somebody else. Shouldn't do that. It's usually somebody who you've got a close personal relationship with, you're not qualified, and really it's just not done. Secondly, it might not actually help you as much as you think. I think the brain, I had this conversation with a lady during the seminar of the Liverpool seminar that I did with Vaknin, and she wanted a diagnosis, and I sort of said to her, why do you want that label? What does it do for you? And she's kind of started to space out and dissociate. And we had this, it was nice. It was a nice conversation to say, what is it that you're looking for with that? So when it's others, I would say it's not as useful as you think. Your brain wants it, and certainly it might be useful to an extent, but my personal opinion, in my humble opinion, when we obsess with giving the other some complex diagnosis, even though we think it's empowering, it's actually I'm not going to use the word covertly, unconsciously, non-consciously feeding back into the mythology of the relationship, and it actually reinforces accidentally the trauma bond. When you're talking about yourself, like, you have instant access to your subjective experience because you're you. Are you finding yourself exhausted, tired, and depressed by doing the simplest things in life? Well, how do I know that I am? Boom, because I experienced that, and that's what I had. So it's much, much easier to say, I think, that complex post-traumatic stress for you accurately defines what you're facing and would be more useful, more realistic. Blair Faultier says only 6 minutes, and then does a smiley face that's crying. I know, I have a tendency to go on. I was proud of my 6 minutes to cover 5 points. Everything moved. How do you find a counsellor that will not be biased? Isn't that difficult to find? Well, counsellors are human beings too. So if you want me to give you my realistic and cynical answer, I would say, look, of course, everybody's biased. Every human being is biased. Every human being comes with prejudice, but it's a scale of bias. And if they're rigidly biased, that's not going to be helpful. So you would need to ascertain how rigidly biased are they, not whether they're totally unbiased or not, because I think that's probably a standard that's too high. Joanna asks if I'm offering coaching. Joanna, I do not offer coaching. However, I do have 2 coaches, Terry and Steve, who I've been working with and training now for a year and 3 months in this subject. And I'm happy that they cover everything that I've defined behind me there and more. They're available for coaching. If you go to the SpartanLifeCoach.com website, and you look, it just says coaching, I think. You can book them. And if you want to come from Preston, yes, they can see you. They can see you where I'm sat right now in the Liverpool Science Park. That's not a problem. I think you're only 40 minutes up the road. Okay. I'm having my first session with a psychologist next week. Any advice on that? The things I should ask? Not really. I think if you've got the session booked, then they'll direct it as they want to with you, and they'll be able to pace skillfully, I hope, where you're coming from. Before you do any work with a psychologist, I would usually recommend that you do like a phone conversation and that you check them out for all the 5 things I've mentioned behind. Most psychologists and counselors will happily chat to you for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. They're not going to give you like free therapy, so don't, respect their boundaries. Just say, yo, I just wanted I just want a conversation with you. I just want to see where you're at, which will be fine. Don't then push them beyond that. But yeah, the conversation would usually go beforehand. If you've already booked the session, then just show up and try and get as much from it as you possibly can. Boop asks, should my therapist tell me if I have complex PTSD or just guide me through it? Me personally, I think that they should tell you, but many people in the healing professions choose not to. I found out that I had shingles in my ear, not because the specialist who saw me, he didn't sell me. I'm still here. I'm still free. The specialist who sold me into slavery, the specialist who saw me sent me from one department to another with my file. And I just looked through the file and looked at his notes and I went, oh dear, that doesn't look very good at all. Apparently I have shingles in my ear and it's called Hunter-Ramsay syndrome. I think he should have told me. Why do they not? Why would some people shy away from that? Because we have the internet now, and people then make their own diagnoses, and they go and look it up online, and they come to their own conclusions. But I would tend to put the locus of control back into the hands of the adult that I'm working with. And they can tell you in a way that, and still have you work through it and just go, look, it's like this. It's not that big of a deal. It has been dealt with before. It will be dealt with again. And I'm going to guide you through this. So it should be okay. Cork, Ireland is in the house. Hello, Mary from Cork. Good to have you here. What do you feel about grieving and angering, says Penelope. Well, it's interesting you asked, what do I feel? These are all both ways of accessing emotions. I don't know what angering is. That's not a verb format that I've heard before. Behind anger, there is usually sadness and usually grief. So grief tends to be, I tend to think of grief as being like if you build a model of emotion, it's the bedrock of problematic repetitive emotions tends to be things that have not been grieved. So grieving can be essential to recovery and to moving emotion. Shante says, are you suggesting a coach is better than a therapist, which my health insurance would cover? That is why I ask. Thank you. No, I don't. For this, straight away, step number one, a coach they're not like life coaching usually is goal setting, getting on with your life, building a lifestyle. It's usually in that direction. So this type of stuff is for counselors and therapists mainly, and they need to be ones who specialize in this. If you can find a coach who specializes and they've covered all of these, then great, you've done well. Question, would you do a video on autism? No, I don't know enough about autism, I'm afraid. Sorry about that. How can I find a coach in rural areas, says Lolly Lovesuckle. So I don't know. You'd go online. I would do it via Skype or via Zoom. You can get a lot done that way. Pippa says, my psychologist said it is going to be recognized. Cool. It should be. It would help. YMCTAMT says, recovered from narcissistic abuse. Thanks, Richard. You are everything. Awesome. Really, really glad to hear that. Is falling in love helping, or it is better to stay alone and heal? Is falling in love just escaping from the pain? I don't know what it is for you, whether falling in love is for you a way of escaping from pain. It certainly isn't always, and sometimes it is. So it depends on where the person is up to in life. I don't recommend romantic relationships as an anesthetic for the pain of a romantic relationship. This is not good strategy, comrade, and usually leads to more trauma, more drama. Julie asks, I've been with a psychologist for 4 years who I trust. I thought I was doing really well. Last few weeks, though, have been worse than ever. Feel as though I'm stuck in a flashback. Is that possible? It's possible. I don't know what kind of work you've been doing with your psychologist and if you're focused on the flashbacks. I don't know what's going on for you in your life. I don't know whether something has triggered this. It could be something that is invisible or seems to be quite innocuous, but there's actually triggered a flashback. And sometimes progress in therapy can trigger flashbacks. So this is something that, because I don't know you, it would be wrong of me to answer based on a paragraph in text like that about something that's so sensitive. So I can't really give you much more on that. It is possible for the reasons I gave, but I don't know enough about the situation. PTSD, social anxiety, and codependency, presumably connected. They can be, they are not always. Is social anxiety within the frame of CPTSD emotional flashbacks? It could be. It could be. I mean, social anxiety could just be another way of describing emotional flashbacks. I mean, this is not an end user question. This is like the way you framed it. I'm going to give you an end user answer. The way you framed it is like the kind of thing that academics or therapists could discuss. Go, is social anxiety just a manifestation of emotional flashbacks? And then the other guy or girl would go, well, depends what you mean by emotional flashbacks. Are you talking about the model that's offered by so-and-so? And then they'd say names and dates. These are important. We need to know whose version of emotional flashbacks we're talking about. So you would end up in like quite a long debate, and it would be a clash of models, whose model of reality is closer to the real reality. Let me give you an end user answer. My personal bias, because I also am biased, is that the best descriptor, the best model that I've ever seen for all mental health issues is the one described by Pete Walker in his book, CPTSD from Surviving Thriving, which is based on other people's work, which is based on, it's all in development. His model works the best for me. So my tendency is to put everything into a CPTSD framework, unless you're talking about paranoid schizophrenia and a couple of other issues that I'd be like, no, that probably is, for example, a drug-induced psychosis. Like if somebody's really, really high on drugs and then gone into withdrawal and they're in psychosis, that's not complex post-traumatic stress. But I tend to see everything through the lens of complex post-traumatic stress and the resultant flashbacks. So even, you said social anxiety. Now, I've used the term social anxiety on this channel before as well. Particularly, I used it a lot about 5 years ago in 2014, and I spoke about overcoming my own social anxiety. I generally don't use that term now. So even that, I would kind of like deconstruct and go, well, what do we mean? Is it a good descriptor of what's happening? Should I just say I generally feel anxious? And then when I'm around people in certain situations and I think people are looking at me, I feel even more anxious. When we reduce something to like a term, and language, of course, is reductionist by nature. It needs to be. Sometimes it's really handy because we can just quickly go, oh, it's social anxiety. Sometimes we lose essential bits of nuance because for the therapists and coaches who are watching, if I say I have social anxiety, that fires off one thing in their head. But if I say I'm generally anxious, but I'm particularly anxious when I'm around other people and I feel like they're looking at me, that'll fire something else off in the head. Do you know what I mean? So it's not, psychology is not, it tries to be a science, but it really isn't. So we are stuck a little bit, belabored, not stuck. We're burdened by the communication method which we have, which is language. We can't psychically, what would it be? Star Trek. They would like do a weird thing and they can feel each other's feelings and experiences. Unfortunately, we can't do that. So I probably wouldn't even use social anxiety as a term that much now. I would rather the person say, this is what I'm experiencing, because the answer to the question is very frequently there in the question. And when we force ourselves to ask really good, really specific, really nuanced questions, we can find answers for ourselves. Let me catch up with the last. Whoa, you guys are asking a lot tonight. Wowie. Okay, let me catch up here. Vulcan Mind Meld. Thank you, Pip. Okay. Thank you, Ancient Lantern, for helping out tonight with moderating. You are very kind, comrade, very kind. Hagislag Hegel. I'm not going to say your name again. So it might help if I'm going to write down my thoughts, ? I mean, it may help me to think of how I describe what I experience. Yeah, I think so. Because you got to communicate it with another human being and give them the most. And plus, it's part of the therapeutic process. I mean, many counselors and therapists would say you should journal so that you can externalize your thoughts and your feelings. Like it's what is it? Thursday night right now, so we all have a go of writing down 500 words of how we felt today, and some of our perceptions, some of our impressions, and then we look at it on Tuesday morning. We go, oh wow, on Thursday night I was obviously in some sort of an altered state there, and my perceptions were to externalize so that we can look at it again objectively. It can be really, really helpful as well. So yeah, writing things down can be massively helpful. Lucas has asked, do you find that people's ability to function properly reasserts itself naturally as they heal their trauma? Yes. I mean, again, I don't want to be nitpicky about words. I wouldn't phrase it like that. The capacity to function properly, you've said, reasserts itself. I think it's just, you're just functioning without the metaphor. Would be more like you're a plane, you're flying along, and you were flying through storms, and so the plane is doing this, and you're fighting for control and to keep it on target, and everybody on board is having a bit of a bad time and their teeth are chattering, and then the storms slowly abate and drift away, and then you're just flying smoothly. So the functioning properly isn't really asserting itself. It's just you're just being you sans the trouble, without all of these issues coming in and making things a bit rocky for you. But yes, absolutely, you'll definitely be functioning better, feeling better, if you heal some of these issues. If you heal from the trauma, absolutely. Omnia has asked, quick tips to break out of freeze response, e.g. body posture, deep breathing, etc. Okay. My whole time that I worked in streetfightsecrets.com, the stuff that I did that was unique, because a lot of like combatives were all basically, there's only so many ways you can hit somebody, like palm strike, elbow, headbutt, blah, blah, blah. The stuff that I did that caused me to stand out in that field, and that I could say was like a unique offering to that field of study, was more to do with conditioning, NLP, hypnosis, and psychology. And all I did for 7 years, really, on that front, when it came to self-protection and the psychology of self-protection, was move people quickly from freeze to fight. So I would alter their trauma response from freezing to fighting. And I offered quick tips like body posture, breathing. There's things you can say inside of your head. There's things that you can do. But my focus then was to help people to do a certain thing, which was to protect themselves and to possibly fight. My focus now is healing. I don't want to offer you any quick tips, mate. I want you to heal. I want you to work on healing your emotional flashbacks. You're probably not just in a freeze response. You're probably in multiple responses at the same time. How do you heal the emotional flashbacks? I have a course. If you go to spartanlifecoach.com and you sign up, and you give them your email, you'll automatically get posted out. Not posted out. God, my words. English is my first language. You get an email that gives you a course. It takes about 2 hours to consume, and if you work on what the course tells you to work on for about 2 weeks, your emotional flashbacks will diminish. But holistically, rather than me just like non-holistically, kind of artificially imposing a new paradigm on you, I'd rather that you healed fully. That's a great question. Thank you for asking. Raina asks, are we responsible for being codependent or narcissistic? If this happened when we were 3 or 4, we were still toddlers. Is narc chooses to be a narc? Did we choose to be codependent? No, of course not. There's no choice. How does a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old raised in a chaotic, traumatic environment have choice? They don't. Nobody would choose that. So no, the answer is no. Okay, let me catch up on the questions. The Ancient Lantern says, bad English is my second language, and swearing is my third. Do you believe in Xanax for trauma from an abusive ex? Do I believe in Xanax? I try and guide people as much as possible away from drugs. And they should be an absolute last resort where everything else has failed. So generally speaking, I would pull you in a direction if we were working together that wouldn't be pharmaceutical. And there are some drugs that if people are on, I wouldn't have my coaches working with them because it actually freezes progress. So we do have a no drugs policy. Freezes progress is my opinion. There are some things that a psychiatrist can prescribe you or a doctor can prescribe you that render coaching totally pointless. That's my opinion. It's not medical fact. And the way the world works is I get to choose what people could be on. I don't think that I would permit my coaches to work with a client who is using Xanax. It's a powerful drug and it's really, really not good for you. So not a fan, mate. Not a fan. I've been taking Adderall for 9 years. What is the best way to stop? You should speak to an Adderall specialist, not just a doctor, but somebody who is a medical professional, which means they've had at least 7 years of training. So not me and not anybody that you're going to find on YouTube. And you need to speak to a doctor who specializes in helping people recover from Adderall. Withdrawing from Adderall, I am aware, can be a very, very difficult and possibly very damaging process. Adderall in its molecular structure is not that far away from meth. So it's something that needs to be done very, very carefully. Please seek qualified medical advice from somebody who is an expert on Adderall. Richard, what are the drugs you find that freeze any progress? Okay, so let me phrase it this way. If you are taking drugs, recreational or medical, to deal with emotional trauma, your progress is going to be much, 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 much slower. Our demands in our coaching programs are very high. It's quite common to say to a client, look, there's something we need you to do 5 times in a day, and it might only take 30 seconds, but it's more demanding than you think. You need to do this exercise, you need to do that exercise. There are no drugs, 0 drugs. What drugs would I recommend? Going for a walk, walking in trees, taking the dog to the beach. Those are the only drugs. Maybe a cup of coffee in the morning, but really all of them. And I'm not against psychedelics for therapy or MDMA for therapy, but generally speaking, I'm fairly straight edge when it comes to coaching, and I'm fairly hard line on drugs. Just stay away from it, because if you have complex post-traumatic stress, the emotional dysregulation is already altering your consciousness. Now you want to take something else that's going to alter your consciousness and your ability to access emotions even more. It's not good. It's really, really not good. So clean, focused, disciplined, and it really should be seen for me. And what I recommend with my coaches is everybody trains. Everybody should be going to the gym. I and my coaches, Terry and Steve, we went to the gym together today. We did Muay Thai for an hour today. We keep healthy, we keep clean, and we live fairly clean, so that we as vessels are moderately clean when we're talking to other human beings who are looking for guidance. Drugs are one of these things that the human ego can very easily think, I've got a handle on this. This isn't changing me. But you're that single point. I'm me, you're you. We're singularities. We're a single point of awareness. I know vastly less about the world than I do know about it. So what I don't know is huge. And what cannot be known to me is the majority. So what that means is I have a very, very, very tiny little bit of feedback coming through a pinhole of reality. There's no chance really that I can know whether the drugs that I'm taking are affecting me, even if it's a hangover. And it could be like, well, I only have 1 large glass of wine a night. Okay, but your colleagues at work notice and your kids notice that the next morning you're not waking up sharp and you're not waking up happy. It's not awful. It's not the worst thing in the world, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you want to be straight edge, and anything can push either way. But because you live life over years, if I pushed you this far this way, you're now warping in another direction. I'm not a preacher. I'm not moralistic. Like, I drink sometimes. I'll enjoy a drink, but all of it is shit. It's all shit. I mean, it's all poison. You know, you got people. I listened to Joe Rogan today at random going on again about how wonderful smoking pot is. It isn't. It just isn't. He says people who do BJJ, they do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is kind of like a grappling thing. It's like a wrestling thing, and they're better when they smoke pot. And I'm just sat there going, I really like you, Joe, but that's horseshit. It's effing nonsense. It's a retroactive justification for people who are psychologically and emotionally addicted to doing a thing. And I wish he'd just admit it. I wish he would just say, I just love to do this. But he wants to frame it as like, it's good, it enhances performance. Me whole, it enhances performance. Stay away from drugs. Stay away from, be straight edge. If you have identified as you have complex post-traumatic stress response, and you want to heal, my dudes, my dudettes, you've got to be moving towards a very clean life, because you're super sensitive. And you'll say in the comments now, to what? To everything. Everything. Hypersensitivity is a marker for all PTSD, never mind complex, all PTSD. Films, music, food, people, the news, traffic jams, everything. You're not, don't think of yourself as tough dustbins that you can just throw stuff in. Control sugar, control fat, control salt, control caffeine. You've got to be moving towards quite a straight edge lifestyle, because you're in recovery. And now I've got people in the comments here saying, you know, I've been trying for 3 years and I've made no progress. And I'm like, I can't see what your life looks like. But I'm looking at, I'm not going to force it, but I'm exploring the possibility of doing retreats in Southern Europe, in Spain and in Portugal. I'm actually going to go back to Southern Europe next week to have a look. I'm only exploring the possibility. But if you do a residential retreat with me, there'll be no alcohol there, and there'll be yoga and walking in nature and meditation every day. And there'll be gym for the people who are mad enough to want to come with me, because I will hurt you there. But to do psychology without looking at the physiology is insane. It's, I mean that very, very, I'm using my words carefully. It's non-sane, because you're revving the engine, you put your foot down and you're putting your brake down at the same time. The body and the mind are not two units, they're one unit. It's very, very counterproductive to treat everything as split, but that's what we do in the West. And when I say the West, it's a stupid thing to say, because everywhere is the West now. Like, culture is completely homogenized. Everywhere that Wi-Fi and MTV is reached is the West. But there was a time where we didn't do this. We saw it as ourselves as one unit, which is what we are. We're one unit. We're one thing, the body and the mind. So if you were to do a retreat with me, anybody who did a retreat, a residential retreat with me that was focused on recovery from complex post-traumatic stress, it would be clean. I don't even know if I would let people drink coffee. I've said to people who've come to meetup groups with me and seminars with me in the evening, and I'll say to them, no alcohol, zero alcohol. Do not come here and then buy a drink while you're here. Don't have a glass of wine because you had a long day at work and then come to my meetup. It's not a social in that way. Because again, it's very, very triggering, and it's very, very hard work. Would you do bomb disposal? Was I'll just have a big glass of Sauvignon Blanc first. I'll just dispose of this bomb. You know, you've got to be careful. You've got to be real careful. You want to be focused. You want to be frosty. You want to be straight and straight edge. And you should be working on yourself physically. You should be hitting the gym, or at least taking a walk. every day, at least trying to get some sort of movement, to get some oxygenation in the body as much as you can. Work from where you are. Clean up your diet, clean up your lifestyle, get off coffee, get off cigarettes, get off everything, because all of that is impeding your progress. So when you start talking about, I don't know what the doses are for these anti-anxiety drugs that people take that numb them out, or the speed me up drugs. So you got Xanax and you got Adderall. I don't know what the dosages are, but you're going to come to me and tell me, oh, you know what? I can't seem to maintain like interpersonal relationships without trouble. And I'm like, because I take Adderall every day. I'm really anxious and I can't figure out why. Also, I'm having like anger attacks. I'm going into fight mode. I wonder why. Why could that possibly be? It's a freaking mystery. So we've got to really, really start looking at how we are functioning as total entities, as total systems, and that includes everything. I'm sorry to be so dull, and I don't get this right all the time. I'm a human. I'm vulnerable. I screw it up. It includes, the entertainment you consume. It includes what time you get to bed. It includes what time you wake up. It includes everything. We've got to clean up our act. Clean it up, and then you're off the hook. Clean up your act, and you're off the hook. Approach life with a clean head, with discipline, with a clear head, not a clean head. Obviously, you should be clean as well. If you're, because that can be an issue, self-abandonment. I'm chatting to people sometimes and I'm like, damn, your hygiene is terrible. And this is not, these are not, sometimes it's younger people I'm talking to. And I'm like, I can smell you. And you smell in a way that you can only smell if you've gone 10 or 11 hours without taking a shower. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm noticing it a lot. I think I'm not going to blame it all on the tech and on the social media, but there is a move towards being out of this reality. You cannot heal and not be present. You cannot heal and not be in this reality. We've got to get into it. It's tough. It sucks. It's not the world I built. I'm sorry that it's like this, but this is the game we're playing. So I think we need to be going, okay, this is the game we're playing. I'm here now. Let me make the most of this. Let me give myself the best chance that I can. Drugs that numb you, drugs that speed you up, drugs that whatever, all of that is an impediment. It doesn't really matter how much of it. Again, I'm very straight edge with that kind of thing. My policy back from doing door work when that's what we call nightclub security work, as far as the lads on the door would be, is I would say not one drop, because as soon as you put alcohol in your mouth, your judgment is gone and there'll be a fight where there wouldn't have been otherwise. And you'll be like, no, I can handle it. I'm in control. And I'm like, you can't. You're not as impervious to this stuff as you think you are. I'm going to start wrapping this up. One thing I'd like to leave you with is the idea of taking care of yourself in the way you would somebody that you really, really care about, and coming to terms with the hypersensitivity, and coming to terms with the fact that you need things, right? This year is the year that I personally, in my own growth, I'm very, very focused on overcoming my codependency. And that means that sometimes I have to consciously remind myself, I need things, and I need to get comfortable with providing myself with the things that I need. I think this is also a reason why a lot of people just go into self-abandonment. They treat themselves like tough, steel, rusty old dustbins, and they go, I'll be all right. And you probably will, because you've hardened your body and your mind to the things that you throw into it. But that doesn't make it okay. It doesn't mean that everything's all good and it's a good thing. It's still self-abuse, because you're not a dustbin. You're not. And you're not that tough. You're actually a very sensitive individual. Most people with CPTSD are very, very sensitive. And that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It means that you can think in a more nuanced way. You can be more creative. These are all positive attributes, but you've really got to take care of it. I'm just going to share a story with you before I finish on this dissociation thing. In the last 2 days, 2 times I have been, one time I was in a bank and the second time I was in a coffee shop. And both of the people working in these 2 establishments, I had a conversation with them, and both times I had to say to them, "Excuse me, can I just stop you there? Are you talking to me?" One was a woman who was about 55. That was the bank teller, and the other was a man who was 35. And in both of my interactions, I had to actually say, I'm really sorry. I don't know who you're talking to right now. Are you talking to me?" Because they both just went, "Hello, how are you? Is this something that you're looking for?" And I'm like, there's other people here. You're pointing your mouth and your eyes like in multiple directions at the same time. Are you trying to talk to me? I'm fairly convinced that this is part of a general movement towards total breakdown in interpersonal boundaries. And these things are important. These things are really, really important. Interpersonal boundaries are important. Personal boundaries are important. Me respecting your boundaries is important. Me looking at you and going, "Hello, how can I help you?" And letting you know that the words, the noises coming out of the largest hole in my head are actually directed at you are pretty important, especially when you're in a service job. You shouldn't be leaving people going, "I don't know. Are you talking to me? Are you talking to me? Are you talking to yourself? Are you talking to the person sat next to you? Are you talking to the chef?" Because I'm getting no eye contact and no intentionality in where your voice is being thrown. You don't want to be that person. You want to be clear. You want to have your intent strong or stronger than it was yesterday. When you decide to do something, you should do it. When you want to follow a certain path because you feel at this moment in time, none of us are omniscient. We don't know for definite that this path that we're on is the right one, or that goal is the right one for us. But having made that decision that that's what we're going to do, we should follow it. We should actually make a decision and then follow it with commitment, with discipline over time. And you should have a good high level of intent. This means practicing having a will. This means practicing making decisions. This means practicing being mindful and clear of mind. Having clarity of intent and a good strong will to back it takes practice. So if there's anything that you could take away from this particular talk about recovery and healing from CPTSR, it's the practice of self-care and then practice of self-discipline and developing your will and your intent. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and for your attention. And I look forward to speaking to you soon. Cheers.